What is the most important aspect of ancient pagan beliefs? What is the key principle behind all of them? Well, it is death, of course. That is why we still have all these ghosts as remains of these beliefs. Veneration of the dead is the oldest practice in the world. The deceased are absolutely vital spirits in this world who still have major influence on it, especially your own ancestors that still guide and influence the world around you. Your own behavior and actions should be coordinated to please them. The problem with the dead is same with the gods. You can't really communicate with them anymore. If you want to try, then cast a die. What we might see as just a random throw of a dice, it is actually a message from your ancestors, message that you can't overlook in any case. When you read about the ancient world, you might take notice how random parts of ritual affect the decision-making of the leaders and men following the ritual. I know I refer to Iliad often in these videos, but take a look at the ritual that the war party witnesses before heading to Troy. It is hard to see it because in this epoch, heroes are having conversations and get clear visuals from the gods, so signs of what to come seem minor as actual dialogue with God. But there are many random things happening in the sacrifice ritual that are outlined for the reader as a forecast of what is about to happen in the future. Most of the readers are not heroes, so they cannot have face-to-face with gods, so the only way to communicate with them is through these rituals, and these little messages are very important. One would take these seemingly random messages very seriously, just like a prediction from a dream that we just don't do nowadays anymore. Let's take an example. If your cow was stolen from you, only the dead could tell you where the criminal is. Then you would need to communicate with them in a ritual that looks like a lottery. As an example of these rituals, I'm going to give you one from the Finns, of course. Siev or sift would be placed on top of the fireplace or at the floor of the house. There is important connection with these places with the dead. Fireplace is where the establisher of the house lives in as an eternal flame, and the floor, well, under the floorboards of the house was a place to bury at least parts of your ancestors to give you good luck. It is a very old practice, and we can see it in Middle East early civilization. There is clear archaeological evidence of skulls being stored inside the household, and they work as an altar. I don't know why there is a need to use swift in this ritual, but I guess the breath of the ancestor comes from the holes of the swift, or that would be my guess. Anyway, after finding the right place to connect with your ancestors, you would need to set markings to see what they have to say. 4 different materials would be placed to 4 cardinal directions at the top of the swift. Salt and bread would be the opposite of each other, like coal and clay. Then there was a need for a brush that has touched a corpse's hair, at least 3 times. It doesn't matter what corpse the brush has touched. All the dead bodies have a connection to the afterlife. Touching the corpses usually brought magical powers to the caster, since they are halfway between these 2 worlds. Lucky number 3 appears again in this ritual for your clever observers. The brush would be then attached to the needle that would be held at the center of the swift. Then the communication could commence. Which way the dangling brush would turn, mud, coal, salt or bread, either way, that would be your guidance from the dead to you. I guess the old ladies who used to do these forecasts didn't have that stable hand anymore, so there was a lot of translation to be done with these results. Although this ritual would give very little clue where your cattle was, most of the time you didn't get such open forum to interact with your ancestors. Some forecasting was done only by specialists, and in a case of crimes like these, a seer could give you answers from a cup of water. The cup was stirred with 2 knives until it was foaming slightly, and from the foam, the seer could see the face of the robber that stole your cow. Of course, the foam doesn't last long, but the seer is quick and manages to take a peek to the afterlife. So, life is quite random eventually. If your ancestors' path had been a little bit different, you wouldn't exist anymore. This fragility must have crossed the minds of humans when they thought about their own existence. It is horrific to stare back at the void of the dead, that have given you this presence. And to come terms with linear time, spiritual belief holds the boundaries of man in place.